trying to stay clean. And a whole lifestyle of rolling out played in my life. Chances of dying, guns pointed in my face, all kinds of danger. There's no electricity, there's no outlets for your phone, there's no nothing. I'm literally hiding from the world.
You have nowhere to be, no one's waiting on you. You have no bills to pay. Like, there is a certain amount of freedom to being homeless.
These are people that were murderers, came out of San Quentin, you know. There was no being independent in this. And I learned that really quick. I have to get with a group of people if I want to survive this. My back's against the wall. Pulls a knife on me, takes everything out of my pockets. But in my head, you're not supposed to let nobody take nothing from you. In my survival instinct, natural instinct, I attacked the man. He's like, I'm sitting here to end your life. I said, okay, but I was like, you haven't done it. He said, I'm not going to do it. But I'm going to tell you one thing. He's like, get out of here. He said, because the next person that's in line to do it's probably going to do it. I'm stuck here forever until I kill myself or someone kills me. That was my life. They throw me in the back of the ambulance and I'm in a constricted position. My body had grown tight and I was just locked up. And they said they had hit me with 4 things of Narcan. He said, failing's what you're good at. It's easy. Have you ever handled success?
You can't have happiness without suffering. Why are we afraid of suffering?
Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be? Brilliant, gorgeous, talented, and fabulous. Actually, who are you not to be? You are a child of God. Your playing small does not serve the world. There's nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. We were born to make manifest the glory of God that is within us. It is not just in some of us, it's in everyone. As we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give others permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others. Marianne Williamson.
Hello, and welcome to Powerful Beyond Measure, a podcast about radical transformation, gritty stories, and the undeniable power of second chances. I'm your host, Matt Culp, a man in long-term recovery who believes in the power of grace, grit, and growth. Each week, we sit down with real people who've overcome real struggles, from addiction to adversity, and found purpose on the other side. No fluff, no filters, just truth, healing, and hope. Because the truth is, you are powerful beyond measure, and it is time that you knew it. Okay, today we have Matt Pedigo. So usually what we do here is we go kind of figure out who you are, where you're from, what's your age, and then you kind of tell your story, like what happened, pretty much, like what happened when you were a kid, how'd you grow up, that type of stuff, and then tell your testimony, and then we'll kind of spitball at the end, pretty much.
Thanks for having me. I'm Matt, like you said. You kind of just touch base on how I am, how I got here, what I'm doing today, and what it looks like. You know, I'm just like any other addict. We all have the same stories, just different similarities, different everything. You know what I mean? I had a loving mother, you know, that would do anything for me. You know what I mean?
Still have.
Yes, I still have. Do we need to start over?
No, you're good.
That's fine. I had a mom and I had a dad. I noticed growing up kind of what my definition of love was, but I also know how it kind of shaped the way I loved and kind of viewed the world. My mom's relationship with my father, not necessarily her fault, wasn't the greatest or anything like that, but she never really gave up on people. And she would do whatever it took for me. You know, I mean, I've seen her buy her own wedding ring, you know, everything like that. She would do anything for me. You know, she worked custodian jobs. She would absolutely, you know, do without just so I could have, you know. And that one day, you know, my father leaves, you know, kind of against her will, against her choice, but it's also a great thing too. So I noticed early on in my life that I had a whole lot of attachment issues.
When did he leave?
When did he leave?
Yeah.
Oh, me, around teenage years.
Okay.
So he wasn't very loving to me. I'm not blaming him or anything like that. He had his own difficulties of his own upbringing. I learned a lot of that through recovery, you know, how to not judge and be more understanding. Because, like I said, his father was an alcoholic too. you know? So I get that, it's hard for him to be loved and stuff. And I see my similarities from him and me as well. And I'll kind of touch base on some of those things. So things got a little bit tougher, but I noticed when I would hang out with people, it was everybody. It wasn't just one. I would hang out with people, whether they were good for me or bad for me, and I would do anything to people please because I didn't want to lose somebody again. At that time, I'm not self-aware of how these actions are taking place. I'm literally doing anything and everything. Any suggestion given to me, I'm doing it with you. You know what I mean? Whether I know whether it's right or whether it's wrong, I don't want somebody to leave me again. That's kind of, stemming how I became and how I was. We would do drugs early ages. I remember going to jail as a teenager and I wouldn't tell on anybody or anything. So they took me in because I never wanted to disappoint anybody ever.
So like people please.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolute people pleasing is what I would do. And for some odd reason, the way my thinking was is it made me feel good. And it made me think that if I did that, they really cared about me and they were going to be around forever. And that's how I based everything. So used, drank, did all the whole partying scene. That's how my life had become, and then you never really know when that thing happens where it becomes just too much. You get through your first little, oops, that happened. Okay. Then my problems kept getting bigger and bigger and greater. And I was really just living to use. And then, I was finally like, okay, I think I need help. But I had no understanding of what recovery was, no understanding of how a rehab worked. I literally thought that you went, they flip a switch in me and I'm done and I'm good. So the first rehab I went to, it was a 30-day program. And I got irritable and I had, the early newcomer, erratic addict behaviors. I'd raised my hand in a group, the tech put my hand down and my addict brain at that time, which was the worst mistake of my life, shoved it down on the table. And I was like, I'm going to use this to get out of here. So, I went to the director, threw little fits like a child. And, they were kind of like, if you do 21 days, the insurance will pay us. We'll let you go after 21 instead of 28. I thought I was winning, I was like, I'm out of here. You get what I mean? 21 days. 21 days was nothing. I got out, probably made it about 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Same cycle. Then, I went on to multiple rehabs. Some of them, the same one twice. I would get in them and they would always do the discharge questions. Hey, you want to do a sober living? It's kind of like, no, I don't. Because I really still wanted to have the freedom of choice if I ever decided in the future I wanted to use again. You know what I mean? Like I say, I didn't have much structure from an older man telling me what to do. So when they told me to get a sponsor, I was like, I make my own decisions. You know what I mean? I love my mom and she loved me to the best of her ability, but I was making my own decisions my whole life. That's it. They were terrible ones, but I was making them, you know? And so I would ask, if I want to fly away, I want to go away, I want to do sober living. Do you want a Vivitrol shot? Do you want this? Do you want that? I never really shut the door on a chance of not being able to use again. Literally, if I decided one day I woke up, I want to use, I'd be like, okay. But going through all these multiple ones, it kind of displayed that pattern of nothing really working in my life. I'm not really putting an effort forward. I'd have a little pink cloud while I'm in there with other, addicts, alcoholics. Life's great, but are you going to continue to do the work when you got out? But I learned throughout my recovery, with my disease and my addiction, it wants to isolate me. And so, I started hitting the bad phases of my life where I got disconnected with even thinking about trying to stay clean. And a whole lifestyle of rolling out played in my life. Chances of dying, guns pointed in my face, all kinds of danger. And like I said, one of my worst problems is letting someone down. You know what I mean? So I would run to the end of the earth. And so after multiple 13 rehabs, different sober livings, I just wanted to do what I knew best. And that was just run. So I went all the way to California. I thought a geographical change would be everything. I thought that would be the greatest thing. Nobody knows my past. Nobody knows anything about me. I can start over. It's really not that easy. It wasn't. It was a whole complete culture change. I went from, Southern traditions to a West Coast lifestyle. It worked really well. There was tons of recovery. I noticed in recovery, I met great people, tons of great things said to me. It was big groups and stuff like that. I had chose to move to a sober living out there, and I'd put down about 8 or 9 months in that sober living, and it wound up that they were going to sell it and become a rehab. So instead of my little $1,200 a week, it was going to be $30,000 for a patient. So they were nice, you know. They were like around July, they're like, you got to go, which that was like about a 2 weeks notice. And so I was kind of like, well, what am I going to do? You know what I mean? I got this good momentum running, you know, and COVID hits, you know, riots hit while I'm living in LA. Luckily, I was at a good job, but, you know, I was with other people that weren't necessarily like me. It was a different lifestyle. You know, it was more of a Latino lifestyle, the people that I was living with. But they were very loving and caring. I had a gentleman that I worked with, you know, offered his home to me. And he's like, I know you don't have anywhere to go, but you can come stay with me. And at the time, you know, I'm clean. I'm a good human being. I'm at work on time. I'm everything, you know. But when I got there, you know, I noticed it was 99% Latino, 1% me. That was it. And he gave me all the warnings and told me everything. He's like, you can't really get out. You can't really go anywhere. He's like, you don't fit in here. It's not that you don't belong here. It's just there's danger and there's gangs and there's other people that, you know, don't want you around. And at the time, there was no public settings or any city, county settings. You couldn't have groups of 10 or more people because of COVID. It was real rough. There wasn't much recovery. So I was kind of, you know, on the outside looking in. There was a couple of meetings. They were Spanish speaking. I can understand a little bit, but I don't think it would have been enough to get a full message from somebody. So basically the lifestyle I had is he would take me to work. I'd come home. The man offered me everything he ever could. You know, he was like a brother to me. He knew I was an addict. He knew I had problems, but he had never really seen the bad side of me. And I got isolated for so long. You know, like I said, I moved away from everybody. You know, I could pick up a phone, but I never had that simple touch of a hug or how was your day when I got off of work. And when I isolate, that's my disease winning. It took me to places that I never wanted to be in. But like I said earlier, is one of my worst fears is when I let you down, I can't face you. I really can't face you. There's something in me at that time in my life that I was living that I didn't want to look you in the face and say, I let you down. That was just me making my own story in my head. No clue what you would say.
Would you run?
But I run. I am 100% runner. I've already ran to California. You know what I mean? To the end of the world. So I did what I thought was best. Back to making my own decisions again. And I decided to go to downtown LA. You know, I wound up 5th Street, 5th and Town on the corner. There was the corner, it was the Jordan Ministry, you know. All those places were closed, but they could slightly serve you food. There were so many restrictions with COVID and everything going on. And I went down there. You know what I mean? There's no electricity. There's no outlets for your phone. There's no nothing. I'm literally hiding from the world. If you want to find me, it's going to be really tough. You know, I'm in a community of 1,500, 2,000 people. And one of the worst problems I have about my addiction that I embrace so much is I never had to be accountable. You know, in my head then, my head today, I'm like, I didn't have to be anywhere on time.
Yeah.
I didn't have to people please anybody. You know what I mean? I thought it was simple and I thought it was easy. You know,
there is a certain amount of, I talked about it with Paul. It was like episode 8 or whatever, but there's a certain amount of like lack of attachment, like lack of, you have nowhere to be, no one's waiting on you. You have no bills to pay. Like there is a certain amount of freedom to being homeless, being out there, you know? I mean, there's a certain amount to being in drug addiction, but there's a whole other level when you're homeless, and like, there is a freedom to it. It sucks. There's trauma that's coming with it, but there is a freedom to it. Yeah. Like you don't have any bills to pay. You don't have no probation to attend to. You don't have nowhere to go. You don't have nothing to clean. No, nothing. It's kind of like prison in so many ways, or jail, whichever one.
You know, I'm kind of glad you used that because, you know, I speak to a lot of people at trauma therapists and all kinds of things like that on a comparison to what my life was like when I got there. I absolutely did not fit in. It's very hard to just walk up on the corner and say, this is where I'm going to be.
This is where I live.
This is me. I know you all have been here since the early 90s, but Matt's here, you know, and he's going to take this little spot right there. And that's not how it works, you know. And we compared it to prison. We compared it to normal day life. We compared it to homeless communities. But in a prison, you get COs, correctional officers. You get fed 3 times a day. You have shelter. The men and women are separated. You know what I mean? There's a little bit of safety, but the comparison is it's dog eat dog. You know what I mean?
Yeah, the similarity.
I don't think I was prepared that I knew I was going to have to fight every day. You couldn't be vulnerable and you couldn't be weak because you were prey to everybody and everyone. One of the first few rules they taught me is if somebody's talking to you, it's a hustle. Don't engage in conversation. And if it don't apply, you absolutely let it fly. And one of the worst things, not the worst things, but it happened. I was white, it was predominantly one race. And then on the other of Crocker and Fifth, it was a Cubano lifestyle. I didn't really fit in. Living in East Los Angeles, I knew enough Spanish, but trying to bounce back and forth and knowing where I need to be. One of the hardest things is the fitting in and having to earn, I couldn't be vulnerable. I couldn't make a phone call. I couldn't call my mom or anybody because somebody saw me weak. They were going to absolutely try me. They were going to take whatever from me. And I know if they took it from me, they're always going to take it from me. But like I said, I had the human instincts of survival, but I also had a great will of wanting to get one more to use again. Yeah. That kept me going. You know what I mean? I didn't want anything that I had in my pockets always taken from me because I thought this was the greatest place ever. No accountability and the access to whatever I want drug-wise is within 20 feet, So I had to learn how to blend in. I am quite a chameleon, but we're all addicts. These are people that were murderers, came out of San Quentin, gang banging, everything. There was no being independent in this. And I learned that really quick that, I have to get with a group of people if I want to survive this. I never really sat there and questioned myself, how long do I want to do this? How long do I want to be here? Is it going to get better? Those weren't really in my mindset of the way I was living and thinking in life.
Well, you're so like in the, I'm going to cop today. I'm going to cop today.
Yes.
I'm going to cop. Nothing else matters.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Nothing else. Like it just doesn't even register.
Nothing.
Yeah. Then you wake up like my friend Ryan or whatever. He did 8 years homeless, and I'm like, 8 years. Son of a gun, dude.
Yes.
People don't make it back from 8 years.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I did multiple.
Yeah.
And, the crazy things is I learned to adapt. You can take a human being and you can put them anywhere and they learn to adapt. Like I said, we had tall buildings, but out in front of the mission, I was able to tell time by where the shade was on my pant legs, and super homeless. I had black jeans and they had turned white on the front from the sun beat, and, never taken my shoes off. I took them off one time after 30 days. My feet were so swollen. I had to put them under my head in case somebody stole them or it'd wake me up if somebody was near me. That was the mentality and the lifestyle I'd produced. And it became normal. We had foot-long rats. We had everything. Just kick them out of the way. As a normal human being, most people would jump on top of a table if they saw a rat. For me, it was move, like it was a stop, like it was just like a cat or a dog, poking at your legs. My mind frame had just completely evolved, and this is how I am, and this is who I am. This is what I'm going to be. This is the way it is, But then I also had the survival instincts, So I had to get more loaded on other kinds of drugs that would stimulate me through the night because rest was not an option. So I'm doing more things than I'm used to, whether I like them or I don't, different stimulants, different kinds of things in this life. And I'm doing them. But like I said, when you comes with the tragedies of being homeless, it would rain a lot in the winter in Los Angeles. So clothes would get soaked and mildewy. So I would have girl pants, anything that was donated to me was the life that I was living, And year and a half, almost 2 years that went by, I kind of started thinking, is there a way there's an out? What can my life look like? I already hate myself. I'm just living. It's kind of like a Groundhog's Day. It's the same thing over and over and over.
Yeah.
Very mundane, very boring. There's no real love in my life. There's no relationships. I have friends and everything like that, but there's no connection to anything. But that's what I thought I always wanted, was a disconnection to the world. That's why I used to numb everything, to get away. I thought this was the greatest place ever, but it had already consumed me. I'm in there so deep. Everybody's lost touch with me. What's an out? And I remembered that my sister a while back was like, do you want to come back home and surprise mom, Christmas Eve and eat? We'll fly you out. I said, yeah, yeah. Didn't think about anything, man. I didn't think like, I got a full beard, my hair's, back to my shoulders, sweats. I walk around holding up with one hand, it's like, I'll worry about it when it gets here. I'll find a way to clean up and make it all the way to Inglewood from downtown. And I had maintained a job, but it was so bad. I would get on the subway and ride to it and fall asleep. They could smell me how bad I stunk. We had a guy that gave me socks. People always offered me help. Alex, the guy I lived with, I would run back all the way to East Los Angeles. And if I made it by 5:30, he'd give me a ride to work. People always were willing to help me, but I just would take it when I needed it and when I thought I wanted it. And then I had missed work for like a month and they still let me keep my job. There's so many people in my corner in my life, but I just don't take the help. And then Thanksgiving came around. I'm like, I'm tired of going to work because I had that addict mentality that I'm going to miss out on somebody sharing drugs with me or anything. I thought I was going to miss the beat, anything that could happen. So I wanted to be there even more full time. You know what I mean? So that means a check, nothing's rolling in anymore. And so I was like, I got 30 days. This is all I got to do is just make it 30 days. And I'm getting on this flight. And my family thinks I'm going to fly back on the 28th. I'm just not. When I get there, I'm just going to tell them the bad news. I've screwed up. You know what I mean? Get rid of me if you want, but I'm back here in Tennessee. It's a lot easier. I'm not in a very dangerous place. And those 30 days is when life hits. It's crazy that, for about a year and a half, year and 3/4, I've been sustainable in this lifestyle. But for some odd reason, those 30 days were so hard. They're incredibly hard.
And I've done this. I'm going to ask you a question because I've done this geographical change and then ended up in this situation similar to you almost. But before I got on the plane to go out there to do the geographical change, I had like 30 days. And I ran it into the ground. Like, I think that I thought I got to get it out of my system, I mean, there was a place before I made that geographical change where I had shot a bunch of drugs in my arm in a bathroom, and I had OD'd a bunch, but I knew that I was about to OD, or I was like real close, and I like literally had this moment in the mirror with like myself, and it was like, I mean, pull the rest up and do it. Like, what are you waiting on? Are you about it or not?
Mm-hmm.
But like, I didn't even make the fucking flight, but. And then I missed the flight and missed another flight. But I mean, I remember like, I was like trying to almost kill myself or something. I don't know. It was that month was the worst month with drug consumption I've ever had in my life. Like, I was just pouring it in no matter what, It was weird. I don't know if there's like correlation between you thinking you're going to get out and never do it again,
Mm-hmm.
Maybe knew deep down or something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, that was towards the end of my story too.
We say from Thanksgiving to when I'm supposed to fly. This is not to be too messy, but a little bit more raw about me and how those 30 days happened, of what it was like. Because it would have to take a whole bunch for me to surrender. I've survived everything. You know what I mean? In my mind, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I can do rock bottoms, but I guess I had to find a new one. So in those 30 days, like I said, I had to join a select group, and, I had to put my ego to the side. I got in good with a lady that was kind of, in control of both sides of the block, and my best way to get more was to be her right hand and just, be her handler and help her with whatever. And a lot came with that. She was, she got cancer in prison. She was shot in the head, just very epileptic, and randomly happened in those 30 days, she started having a lot of epileptic seizures. And she kept me safe a lot of times. But she had to go to the hospital. She didn't know she was going to the hospital because she would always deny it. Because when you come up for seizures, she didn't know. She was already on a gurney. They were already taking her. So I'm kind of just having to look around at everybody. It's just me. There's no more protection. There's no more anything. But I got to stick to the same rules that she taught me. And There was a gentleman, he was Cuban, he came and he was like, here's my phone, you know what I mean? You know, can I get porn on it? Whatever. I didn't want to touch it. He kept forcing it. I grabbed it to him. I said, no, you can't. Handed it back to me. So he comes back in and he's like, where's the phone? Like, I gave it to you. Gig's up. I know I'm in trouble. My back's against the wall. You know, pulls a knife on me, takes everything out of my pockets. Nothing I can do. But in my head, you're not supposed to let nobody take nothing from you. And she's not around anymore, so I was going to chase him. And at that moment, I actually had clarity. I never had any clarity. I was like, these Cubanos are finally going to get their reason to kill me. They're going to say I attacked one of them. She's not here to see it, and it's their story against mine. I get it. You know what I mean? You know, that was within the first week. Then she gets out of the hospital, and she had a very weird relationship with an individual, very abusive. And I was in another room while she was in another room, and he was literally killing her. He was choking her out and beating her. And in my survival instinct, natural instinct, I attacked the man. When I grabbed him, I threw him on the ground. I broke his leg. Did not know that. Did not know that. And so I'm kind of laying low and just passing time, you know, trying to just be a chameleon, you know. But all these things are just starting to happen and shape everything that's going on. And when you have that survival instinct, you know, I was taught, always keep your back against the wall, put a foot against the wall. That means you have a weapon or some way to protect yourself. Those are how I was living. And I had this weird feeling, and an individual just over in the corner just had his eyes on me, where he looked like he wanted something from me. Time goes by. The gentleman comes up to me. He's like, I want to talk to you. And I'll never forget it. You know, we sat down on these little steps. And I was like, yeah, what you got? He's like, I'm sitting here to end your life. I said, okay, but I was like, you haven't done it. He said, I'm not going to do it. But I'm going to tell you one thing. He's like, get out of here. He said, because the next person that's in line to do it's probably going to do it. But I respect what you did for her and how you did it. But you got to get out of here. I had so many people tell me all the time, you don't belong here. Why do you want to stay here? You have potential. Get out of here. And it really messed with me. And I was like, oh, man. So I'm about 2 days away from this flight. And I'm like, you know, on eggshells, just more alert, more everything. I'm like, I've never had the will to kill myself. I never had the strength. But for some odd reason in me, I was like, wow, that's not how I want to go. I don't want to die. So the day before my flight comes, right? So I'm still the same homeless person, clothes, hair, nothing. I was like, I got to make that phone call to my sister because I don't know how I'm getting to Inglewood to get on this flight. You know what I mean? It's been raining. It's been cold. I've had pneumonia for like 10 days. Barely can breathe, anything like that. And I call her. And my sister really wasn't ever a part. I never drug her through my addiction. You know, never called on her, never put her through any of the pains that I did like my mother and other people. And it was the middle of the night. And I was like, hey, can you get me a ride to the airport in the morning? She's like, what do you mean? I was like, I don't have a way to get there. She's like, oh, okay. And I guess it was dark. Her and her husband, my brother-in-law, were sleeping. And she was like, where you at? You know? I was like, fifth in town. Quick answer. And I guess Skid Row shows up on a map, you know? She had been through enough to know that we're tired of Matt. Same old story. He's tried this over and over and over. Mr. Can't Get Right, never going to give it up. You know what I mean? But she's like, all right, we'll send you an Uber. Don't know how we're going to do it. Because for an Uber at that time, they would charge about $150, $200 just to come down to Skid Row. And they would sit for 2 minutes, leave, collect the money. It's wild. In my head, I'm just reaching because I'm like, okay, well, I don't know what kind of Uber it's going to be. I don't know what the car is. I don't know when it's waiting on me. That means I'm going to have to stand on the sidewalk, very visible. I don't have a phone. I don't have anything. You know, I'm borrowing somebody's phone for 2 minutes. I traded and bartered just to get that. And she's like, just be right here at 6 in the morning. My flight was at 10. I was like, okay, I'll be there. So I hang up and get the phone back. I go up underneath, you know, a tarp/tent. It's raining. I'm just going to wait it out till 6 in the morning and just see how it goes. And about, I couldn't really tell you what time it was, but it felt like about a 2, 3 in the morning. Some people pull up on me and they're like, you're coming with me. And I'm like, I don't want to tell them I'm getting on a flight and leaving because you're not allowed to leave. Once you're in, you're in. That's the lifestyle you chose. You're in it. Similarity to prisons, everything. It's all survival. And I was like, no, I'm a pass. So they physically took my shoes and they threw me in a car and they took me over to 7th. And that's where I was. They kept me all night. They're like, you ain't going nowhere. So the guy I borrowed the phone from sold me out for whatever it was he wanted they had to offer. That's how the game worked. So I remember it was about 9:45. In my head, I'm dead inside, but I'm like, well, I still got 45 minutes to my flight. No, it ain't happening. They kept me. Never made it. Never made it. Christmas rolled around. I'm like, everybody's gone. So I just beeline it. Insanity. I go back to the same place that I'm at. Dead inside. Super dead inside. I'm stuck here forever until I kill myself or someone kills me. That was my life. I don't even think I had the urge to use that day. The will for one more wasn't there. The will to end it was there more than it was to use. And like I said, I didn't want to ask nobody for help or reach back out. What could I tell them that would make them believe me? That's how I was living. You're not going to believe me. I've told you the same thing over and over and over. I've burnt those bridges. And the one thing that I've been taught in this is I'll never get to be the judge and jury or the dictator of the consequences of my actions. I don't get to decide outcomes of things I've done. So I remember I stood in 3 different lines trying to get something to eat. Got about 6, 7 away. Empty, empty, empty. So I went back to where I normally went in the corner, just leaned up against the wall. They were like, hey, get this sleeping bag. They're passing them out down there. I went and get it. And I don't even open it. I'll leave it in the film because it's raining. And it's about the only thing that I own. I got sidetracked later that night and it was stolen. And so I was like, yeah, cut me a break, man. This is it. I don't have nothing. Nothing. And then there was a lady. You hear a lot about her and what she had. And that wasn't my drug of choice. But I knew it was very powerful. And like I said, this is how I'm going to attempt to just end this. Nobody's going to be able to get me. I'm not going to be able to get out of here. It's just time to quit. So I did the most selfish thing I ever did. I manipulated her. I told her I'd be okay because I remember her clearly asking me, this is strong. This is what you do. I said, it's absolutely what I do. Did it once. Exhaled. Got offered one more. Boom. Lights out. Busted the side of my head on the corner of 5th and Town. Bleeding out while it's raining. Dead as can be. As I can absolutely be. Got everything I wanted. There's no telling how long I was out. Now, when I speak to different people, I find out. And to continue the story is I'm being woken up from EMTs, the fire department, and I'm strapped to a gurney. I'm just in complete shock of what's happening in life. What's going on? I'm quivering and shaking because I had been gone for so long. My body had started to turn cold. My veins had sunk down. And they're like, do you want to go with us? And I'm still trying to figure out what's happening, I'm like, yeah, I want out of here. Because that's why I attempted to take my life was I wanted out of here. And being strapped to a gurney and soaking wet, yeah, let's go. So they throw me in the back of the ambulance and I'm in a constricted position. My body had grown tight and I was just locked up. And they said they had hit me with 4 things of Narcan. And so I'm soiling and puking myself. And the EMTs were mad and yelling at me. Then they started just punching me in the back of the head. I have no resentment towards this individual today. I can only imagine how bad that stench and stuff was. But as he was hitting me in the back of the head, he was calling me, a POS, a homeless junkie, all kinds of bad names. And I was going to open my mouth and say, no, I'm not. But that's one of the greatest epiphanies and moments in my life that I didn't say anything. I couldn't get a word out for some odd reason. I don't know if it was so cold, a power greater than me stopped me. I took the accountability that somebody had gave me. I had done a step 1 that I was powerless over drugs. I realized it in that exact moment. This is where I'm at. Grown man with what little I had on donated to me. I'm running, destroying, puking. And the second part of that step 1 was my life had become unmanageable. This isn't a normal lifestyle. The power of the steps is great. That one was happening right then and right there. It was inspiring to me. They put the little duck bill on me, so the whole ride to the ambulance, I was puking in it and inhaling it right back in. But I needed to go through that misery. It was great. So when I get to the hospital, it's kind of overwhelming. So many people are coming up to me, officers, this and that. They found an empty syringe in my pocket. I guess that's the only thing I owned at the time. Do you want to press charges? I'm like, I don't even know who to press them against. No, I don't want them. They're like, you almost died. Da, da, da. You've been gone for so long. We barely made it. Blah, blah, blah. And they're like, do you have somewhere to go? I was like, yeah, I got a tent out there. That's just how my mouth worked. It just threw something out quick. And it's that same repetitive, turn down the help, right? And I know it today, and knew it then because I've been around for so long. I just had never done it. Step 2 was starting to happen in my life. It doesn't say we came to believe in a power. It says we come to believe that a power greater than myself could restore me to sanity. That power was happening. It was the nurses cutting my clothes off, cleaning me up. They were getting ready to ship me out like they did every other homeless person, but they were like, it says here, the doctor wants to see you. So I was warm for a couple more hours till he got in there. He's like, you got a pretty bad spot on your head and you have an irregular heartbeat. You got a lot kind of going on with you. I don't really think I want to let you go yet. Would you like to stay and we run some more tests on you? I took help and said, yeah. I was like, they're going to feed me. I'm going to be warm for one more day. Granted, I'm just wearing a gown, but I'm not fighting. I'm not cold. I took help. So it comes back and he's like, we see you're an addict. Would you like help? I said, yes. And he comes back later. He's like, I see you declined it. I was like, was that an answer I gave you when I got here? You know what I mean? I was like, no, I want help. And he's like, well, I'm going to keep you overnight. I was like, I'll take a free night anywhere, The cheap hotels would charge me more than that for one night. I'm taking a free one, So they keep me in there. Little did I know the power of help, was helping me. They had got in touch with my emergency contact. They had contacted a friend. They had contacted my mother and told them the state and condition I had been in. And so they kind of made a choice for me that I wasn't able to make. And they were like, can we get him back here? Because I thought when I missed that flight, they weren't ever going to spend money to fly me back home. Well, those social workers put everything together. I had taken a COVID test, passed. They had some printed documents of my license, whatever. Nothing's real. Then you're not going to see, like a holographic on a license. You're just getting a printed copy. And they're like, we got a flight for you tomorrow at 9:30 a.m. But my addict mouth again is like, well, I don't have any clothes. I don't have this. I don't have that. Just stop. Shut up. Take the help. You know what I mean? Let it happen. So it comes. They really did. They gave me a little brown bag, gave me some juices. We get up. And I'm like, I don't have any clothes. I just got this dress, no underwear, no nothing. They're like, wait a second. So they run and they get some lost and found clothes, typical LA fashion. I love telling story. Triple X Mickey Mouse shirt. I'm 138 pounds. Covered me. Some 34s, no underwear, no nothing. So they tape them around me. I probably stink. I'm nasty. I look terrible. But in my head, I look like I should look. You know what I mean? This is what I've done to myself. So they put me in a van. They drove me all the way to Inglewood, drove me to LAX right there. I'm at the airport. I go in, I check. I don't have a carry-on. I don't have nothing. They run me through TSA. Did not pass. I reeked of drugs, probably stench. So they pull me to the side. They want to do everything. I'm like, bro, there's nothing holding this up but tape. We can do the cavity search, whatever you want. And I think they saw a beaten and broken person, and they're like, this dude's harmless. We're going to put him on the flight. And when I talk about the steps, I go to get on this flight, and the third step happens. I made a decision to turn my will and my life over to the care of God as I understood him. I made a decision. I got on that flight. I never saw the pilot, never asked him if he had a license. Has he ever crashed? I don't even think I even knew he was flying the plane. I didn't even check that. Actually went to my seat, felt sorry for the person on my left and on my right, but I gave my whole life over to something that was greater than me and trusted them that I was going to be okay for the next 4.5 hours. It's a great spiritual thing. And then when I got to B&A into Nashville, people in Narcotics Anonymous picked me up. I didn't have to make that phone call. Where you at? And they're like, oh, I'm around the corner. No, they were there. They were waiting on me. And I made a decision to get in that car. They offered me a place to stay for a week. And I did it. I'm starting to make these decisions and take the help, right? They cut my hair. People in the rooms and in this program offered free help. And I was vulnerable enough and broken enough, like it says in our literature. You know, some of us have to be beaten and broken to fully surrender. So I got everything I needed, not necessarily deserved, what I needed. And so time goes there and they're like, well, what do you need to do? I'm like, just give me some place to lay down. My desire to use is gone. I don't have the desire to live yet because I don't know what hope is. You know, I don't know life gets better. But I was like, for this day and this day only, I don't want to make life worse for myself. So I took the help. But about the week came to an end. They're like, what do you want to do, Matt? What do you want to do? It's like, I'm good. You know, I could repeat that in the story over and over. I'm good. Simple, easy answer, protects the ego, puts me back in control. I get to make all the decisions again, right? And they're like, you don't look good. We cleaned you up. We fed you. But I don't think where you're going looks good. We don't want to drop you off anywhere. So I was like, I'm not going to do rehab. I've already done 13 of those. I'm like, what about a sober living? I was like, yeah, I need a place to stay. I was like, do you know anybody? They're like, I'll call one. They called one and it was full. It's like, okay. No sober living for Matt. They're like, that ain't the only one in the world. You know what I mean? Stop trying to plan everything for yourself, you know? They call a second one. And the owner was like, yeah, I got a spot for him. They were like, we got you in a spot. And I'm like, I ain't got no money. You know, I wanted to avoid everything, you know, or have a part in it that I did it myself.
Mm.
You know, I wanted to say I did it. They're like, well, we're eliminating choice from you. Finally in my life, somebody has stopped me from making my own choices. You know what I mean?
Eliminating excuses.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, backpack full of them. I took them everywhere with me when I went. I did. You know, I was so ego and driven that I could do it. And knowing repetitively and relapse after relapse, I can't do it without help, without someone else. So they paid my first week. So I'm like, all right, we'll do it. I get in there. It's somewhere to lay. It's somewhere warm. Still, you know, going through the DTs. And I meet other people. I look at them and they're miserable like I am. But I would also see people with 45, 60 days. You know, they're smiling a little bit. And I'm like, is that obtainable? So the first week ended and I'm like, all right, I'm out. Nope. Somebody else donated a payment. Well, you know what I mean? I already got my stuff up there and I got a bed. I'm warm. So, you know, I'm 2 weeks in. I'm always looking for the out. But life's really not that bad. I'm not looking over my shoulder. Nobody wants nothing from me except for rent. You know what I mean? Just, that's the biggest problem I have. And it's not a real problem compared to what I was doing. And people in this program offer me little odd and end jobs, you know. As much as I avoided coming up with rent money, it came up. You know what I mean? As much as I'm fighting this process, I finally have people in my corner that don't want me to fail. But the vulnerability is the greatest thing I've ever done in this surrender. I'm letting it happen, you know? I'm not doing a whole lot, but I'm going through the motions. And that's what I was taught in that program. Is just go through the motions. Just keep going, you know? And so it kept happening. I got moved to another house, which is great. Change happens. You know, I get to meet more addicts, more people that are going through the same thing as I am. I'm getting to share similarities. You know, I didn't have much of a purpose. Couldn't really find much of a job. Still kind of, you know, going through the roughs and clearing my body out. But, you know, I kind of wake up early and had a little serenity. I would drink coffee and there was an island in the kitchen. And I think I wanted you to be able to read the newspaper in the reflection of this thing. You know, that was my one little purpose. 5:30 in the morning, you couldn't find a spot on it. That was just me. So I did it for, a couple weeks, and then I'm not hardcore into this recovery thing. I'm a little dry. I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. I'm attending meetings, but I'm not taking this whole program in. I'm not like fully working it. So that lets my disease creep back in. Lets my ego kind of take the wheel again. And I got vulnerable. I talked to an individual, and I said, I'm good. I've done this recovery process, been in and out of NA over and over, AA, in and over. I know what I need to do. I kind of try it. I'm going to wing it. But I feel like I'm taking a bed from somebody. You know what I mean? I'm being selfish. I had a guy one time tell me, if you're not doing the program, you're cheating somebody, So I kind of took that in my head and ran with it. That out again. I wanted freedom again, but I couldn't buy a pack of cigarettes. I couldn't buy something to eat. And I couldn't come up with the rent anymore. And I'm telling this individual, I'm going to go try it out on my own. I've hit that spot back into giving up again. Easy. Very easy. And I'm very glad that I got vulnerable with that individual. And I'm very glad for what he said to me. He didn't judge me. He didn't do anything. He just kind of looked at me, said, you want to leave? You can leave. But I don't really want you to leave. And it kind of set a bomb off inside of me, like an aha moment. Like, I think somebody genuinely cares about me. I haven't felt that in years. You know what I mean? I've ran from feelings. I've ran from people. I've ran from relationships. The person was like, I don't want you to leave. I was like, okay, but that doesn't make the rent get paid. The person said, you know what? I believe in you and I want to invest in you. Your next week rent, I will pay. You don't have to pay me back. I'd like for you to pay me back. I hope you want to pay me back. I got what he meant when he said that. And when I talked about those last 30 days is why I shared them, the next week was a different transformation in my life. And I wound up getting a job, and I've maintained that job for years. I paid everything back I ever owned. I stayed in that program for 17 months. And when I share that and I say the greatest part about that is I needed to be in a sober living. Everybody gets a freedom of choice whether they go to a sober living or they don't. I can tell you what it did for me and how it helped. Me going to that sober living was when I wanted to quit. I had other people that believed in me. And I took it upon myself that when they wanted to quit, it was my turn to believe in them.
Yeah.
I felt like that's how the sober living lifestyle went for me.
Yeah. You're very good at like while living in the sober living, which sometimes you're a bit much, but the networking and the accountability that surrounds you changes the house. And what I figured out about you is that you want the accountability. So you want the networking. So you put that on the crowd around you so that they will catch you, And like usually what I've noticed is at first is like it's rough, People don't want to be vulnerable. They don't want accountability. They don't want to network. And then over time, it all happens around you, honestly. Like it's always like starts out weird. And then like the people around you are like, God bless. I wish he'd, and I wish he'd. And then like 6 weeks goes by and everybody's networking. Everybody's holding each other accountable. Everybody's being vulnerable, But at first everybody's like, I don't want to do any of that. Here comes Matt. He wants us all to do these things, You're like, I mean, I've just seen it happen so many times that like you would move into a different house and it would change the dynamic of that home, Yeah.
And that stimulated because I got really passionate. What works for others doesn't necessarily was what works for me. And I was really passionate because the whole sober living gig for me, everything was an upgrade. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm warm.
Yeah.
I'm not getting rained on, you know? People acting around me were not as wild as the people that were when I was in the homeless community.
Yeah.
They were a lot meaner and called me a lot more things. And I'm used to having very little space. We'd be under a tarp with 4 or 5 people. So small rooms, sharing a room didn't bother me. But I also had to notice in this program that where I'm at's not where everybody else is at. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And just because I went through it doesn't mean they went through it. But the greatest thing in the program I noticed is we've all been at our bottom. We all want something different. And I was very passionate about it. And I got around so many people and tried to be an inspiration because they didn't know inside. They were really the ones inspiring me,
Yeah.
you know, because they took the help probably sooner than I ever did in my life, you know?
Trust me, I know all about that concept.
Absolutely, you know?
I put people around my life. I put you around my life to, I mean, you probably helped me more than you ever know, you know? Just picking you up every day, riding around the truck, just like,
Yes.
I mean, do I like that you're like, Matt, are you going to change the headlight on your truck? It's been 2 weeks. And like, no, I fucking don't. Every time you get in the truck, I'm like, no, I don't want to change the headlight. I'm too busy. I'm too lazy, whatever, you know? Do I like that? No, but like it did something for me in my life that, you know, just being there for you and watching you grow, like it changed my life, you know? All the people pretty much, you were probably the closest to me, but all the people that were around your group greatly affected my life. And like after everybody graduated, it was like there was a relief, and there was also like, can I do it again? Like it took a lot out of me because, you know, I have the years, and like once you have years, you start having a life and you start going to bed at like a certain time, and like y'all would like need things from me that I was not normally doing. You know, it wasn't much. It was like show up to celebrations and, you know, or whatever, you know, and I was like, that's at 8, you know, like, you know, so it was like, it wore me out because I'm not used to it. Everybody there was on a pink cloud. And then here I am, like, I feel like I'm the dad or like really old. And I was trying to participate and trying to like help lead in some form or fashion. Really, I just promoted y'all to lead yourself, you know. I didn't really I gave y'all opportunity to have a great community, and it turned out really well, you know. Most of y'all are doing really well, but I did, you know, afterwards I was like, I was just happy to be there in that moment of time when approximately 10 people really got together and got sober, you know. But like, can I produce it again is a hard chore.
Yeah.
Yeah. Am I willing to get in the truck and drive another Matt Pedigo around every day and deal with another Brandon and another Jacob? And I mean, 2 Jacobs will kill you, you know.
Or Jacob and Matt together, you know? It'll really test you.
Yeah.
You know, I'm glad when you share that thing. This is probably the best part of when I just tell how my life and how it was is you see I'm clean, right?
Yeah.
But am I actually clean? You know what I mean? I don't know what hope necessarily looks like. I'm just doing the 24 hours like I'm supposed to.
Today or then?
Then.
Okay. Then.
You know,
Yeah.
the 24 hours. Does it get better? You know, so I get the job, you know, I get a core and, you know, life gets better and stuff like that. But I always get to reflect on things that happened in my life, you know. I'd been in meetings all over, you know. You get to go to the noon meetings where people with 40 years clean. I had an individual come up to me. He's like, young man, can I ask you a question? And I'm like, yeah, go ahead. He was like, what if I asked if you could have a Rolex or you could use again one day? I'm like, man, ego. I don't know the right answer. A or B, A or B, A or B. And I was like, I don't know. And he was like, I'm just going to tell you right now, there's no day that you can ever go back and use without any consequences or actions. But if you hang around here long enough, you'll get plenty of Rolexes. And he lifted his arm up and showed me his. He says, you don't believe me now, but if you hang around, you will. You know? So in my head, I hear little hope shots and little things like that. Finally getting money and an income and things like that happen in my life. But it always takes me back when I tell you I got to do the rehab tour. You know, I traveled all over America, sober living's on the beach, in the middle of the woods, no phone service. I got a taste of everything. You know, that's like that cheesy old saying, you know, I failed 1,000 prescriptions and only needed one solution. But I'm glad all these things are happening in my life. You know, I get to hear them in my head. They're finally taking place. I get to see how I use those tools of what they told me. A grown man had sat me down, looked me dead in the face. He said, what is your biggest fear? You know? And I've told you the whole time during all this, my biggest fear is facing you when I've let you down. But at that moment, I said, failure. Just started laughing, just obnoxiously laughing. I'm calling him every name in my brain you can think of right now. And what's so funny, you know? He said, failing's the only thing you're good at.
Mm.
I didn't have nothing to say back then. You know what I mean? It takes a lot to kind of get me one of those, you know? It took me being in an ambulance to not say something, you know? Because I'm quick to say I'm good. And I actually kind of heard it, took it in, let it absorb, you know, let it flow through me and kind of, you know, try to pick it apart of what that meant. I let him explain it. He said, failing's what you're good at. It's easy. Have you ever handled success? Have you ever handled long-term recovery? You know, have you been able to stay clean? He hit me with one. I was like, okay, success is hard. But I had to look and figure out what success is. You know, is my success greed driven? What is it? So, you know, I'm in these meetings and, you know, you get the sponsor, you read the literature, you learn more about the disease, you try to figure it out. And, you know, success to me is pointless if you have no one to share it with. No one to share it with. Then I have to question, what is my success? Is it greed based? Is it how much I have? How much is it I show somebody? And it wasn't. After diving into myself and learning about myself, everything I possibly could, success is not necessarily about me. It's about helping others. Because in this life, you die twice. You're buried, and then when nobody mentions your name ever again. How do I want to be remembered? Am I that same guy that was on Skid Row that said, when I die, nobody will be at my funeral? What would they say about me? You know what I mean? So my lifestyle's improving. I'm learning how to be an addict in daily life. You know, how do I function with people that are normal and people that are just like me? What are the similarities? How do I do this? How do I handle success? You don't pay a bill. Why did I not pay a bill? Greed. I got to learn about these habits. Also had to learn and identify what my disease is. How does it play? And I noticed it's not drugs. Drugs was just the outside solution that I put in to pause the problem.
Yeah.
Running was the other problem. Like I said, my father ran. Shared similarities, you know? So,
I feel like this is the only time in your life you didn't run.
yes,
Me too.
absolutely.
It's the first time I ever been in a city, got here, set my feet on the ground, my ass in the chair, and said, I'm here. And I'm not going anywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm facing it, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And maybe it was easier for people that have been in recovery a lot more because I'd called myself every name you could think of when I was homeless, and I got called every name you could think of. You couldn't really hurt my feelings, you know? They'd sit me down, open the book, tell me what the first page says. It doesn't have anything. It's nothing. They said, that's you. That is you.
That's what you know, right there.
That's what you know.
Yeah.
And the old me would always want to be like, well, I could tell you something fancy, but could I really stand on it? Could I really give you more to what I was saying? Did it mean anything when it came out of my mouth? You know? And I was always told when you're in a meeting, you know, keep it 2-3 minutes. Anything other than that, you're just being self-righteous and wanting to hear yourself speak.
Yeah, you just showboat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Keep
Everybody lose conscious after 3 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Say what you need to say and mean it.
My home group has a timer. They shut people off.
Yeah.
I like that. I don't ever go that long, but
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I think there's a 6 minutes, which is a little bit.
Ooh.
They have a 3-minute warning, and then
Yeah.
6 minutes will shut you down.
And I didn't do too much sharing early in recovery because accountability again. They're like, what do you have to offer?
Yeah.
I said, well, I have to offer what everybody else has went through, and that's misery. And like, we know what that is. Give us something that's going to inspire us. So I was like, let's just hang on a little bit till hope flies in. You know what I mean? Till I have something to offer. And like I said, I stayed in that sober living 16, 17 months. I didn't rush anything. Where do I got to be? If I can stand on a sidewalk for about 2 years, I can stay where I'm at, you know? Let things happen naturally. Stop forcing it. Because anything I made that was my decision, never panned out long term. You know, my decisions would be okay for 2 or 3 hours till consequences hit, you know?
Yeah.
And other things that I learned, you know, my mother was really my first sponsor. You know what I mean? She taught me what love was. She taught me what everything is, you know? I never really got to realize what that was and how it was, you know? And that's what love is to me. I get passionate around other people wanting to get clean because you just don't give up on them. You let them fail 100%. You let them fail.
Yeah.
And when they're ready, stick your arms out, you know?
Yeah.
That's one of the embracing things.
You're always there, but you're never carrying them. You know?
They always told me I can be empathetic, but you're not getting sympathy.
Yeah.
Been where you're at, but I'm not going to give you the sympathy. I'm not a promoter of you getting whooped, but it's healthy. It was for me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't want you to go through it. I want you to put the shovel down and stop digging.
Until you're ready to stop digging, you ain't going to stop. That's one thing I've learned about people. That's one, I think Threshold has helped me be a better sponsor, be a better dad, be a better recovery member, because I understand that people are going to do what they're going to do, and they only learn the hard way. And I'm only here to show them love while they're in front of me and be there when they need me. And that's it. Like, if I shove it down their throat, make them do it, I understood early on that, like, I have some of these people are indigent. They're in situations like you, or worse sometimes. And, you know, you could make them do whatever, you know, because they have nowhere to go.
Mm-hmm.
But, like, what are they going to get from me? Never nothing if I make them do something, you know? If I threaten them with, I heard so many people, like, you know, being in recovery meetings, and then people will say out loud, their shares will threaten them with death. You know, if you don't do so-and-so, you're going to die. If you don't do so-and-so, you're going to die. So, like, they know those. That's not what makes someone change. What makes somebody change is them actually overdosing, or them actually doing the thing, actually hitting rock bottom. Like, you could hear it all day long. But what are you hearing from me? Like, do you hear that I love you? Do you hear that I care for you? Do you hear that I'll be here when you come back? You know, those are the things that I, like, try to emphasize on. Like, I can't change these people, you know, allowing them to, there's an opposite side of that I can't allow to happen too, you know, like allowing them to take advantage of boundaries, or, you know, like that type of stuff you can't do. But you also aren't in control. You know, I think it's an Al-Anon thing, but you say it, it's, you can't control it, you can't change it,
Can't cure it.
Yeah. And it's almost like having that approach to people in general. I had to go through that, like, in my marriage. Like, I can't change it, I can't control it, I can't cure it. You know, it ain't me. It ain't got nothing to do with me. You know, which was hard because it's at home, and that's different than at a house that I run. You know, it's different.
Man, everything you touched on is just great lead up to where my life's at when I was about 6 months clean.
Yeah.
You know, and still got kind of that mentality, and I like easy. So as long as I just show up in the meetings and I listen to everybody share and stuff like that. Some people kind of got to know me intimately and personally, and they confronted me, which I'm glad they did. They said, why you not ever say anything? Why you never share? Like, well, I don't have nothing to offer. So I'm kind of like, this is very contradicting. They were like, that's true and it's not true. Because you're still falling back into your selfish ways. You're just being a taker of this program. You know, you got the job, you got the car, you know, life's close to normal is what it can be for an addict. You know what I mean? On the outside image. And so they had to work with me and let me figure it out. And getting into the literature and everything like that, I got to see so many things that popped out, you know, and one of the greatest things is every miserable day that I shared through my addiction and my disease doesn't serve any purpose if I don't share it with another one. So all those days are rendered useless. So if I can take all the miserable days and I can share it with somebody else. And then also in my literature, it says I'm not speaking to the whole room. I got to remember that. I can't let my ego take over and think everybody's going to soak up everything I say. It's just those one-liners that somebody needed to hear in that moment. Just like I could tell from so many ways and so many people that have told me one-liners. So I got into outreach. I got into doing panels. I went and spoke different places. It helped me, and I hope it helped other people. So I stopped being a taker, and they taught me you got to give back. You're on a good platform, but if you want to keep what you have, you got to give it away. You can't just take everything and then just disappear. Your disease loves that. Another great quality, sober living for me, I speak for the sober living for me and me only, was I got to see people at different stages. I got to see the people with 7, 8 months say, hey, me and my roommate, we're going to go get a studio, a little 10 by 10. We're going to make it work. No furniture. Going to make it work. Didn't make it for them. You know what I mean? So I got to see others before me and what didn't work for them. But it also made me stay serious.
Yeah.
Very serious. Do you trust yourself enough to where you will maintain this lifestyle of being present in other addicts' lives and for yourself? So I got service positions, I was a co-facilitator and facilitator because my disease would literally be like, hey, you worked all day. You can skip tonight. No, I had things where I was supposed to be. And I had those group of people around me that if I didn't show up, they were going to annoy me, call me, and bug me. I had people that cared. And like I said, I waited 16, 17 months. I went from 6 people in one house to 1 bathroom to a starter apartment with 2 bedrooms and 2 baths. I got to let my ego out a little bit when I was getting that apartment. I was like, I want 2 baths. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I earned it on my own, but I didn't when I say that. Recovery gave me everything. Everything enabled that. And when I forget that, I'm doomed.
For sure.
So my disease pops in every day, I have to look at it, and then I have to have other people look at it. It got pointed out. I'll eat food like I use drugs. I want tons. You've already had 5 slices. I want the whole box. Box was spelled B-A-G. You know what I mean? I want the whole thing. Never would stop. But then let's look at it. How does it pertain to your disease? Does it make your life unmanageable? Absolutely. Tying my shoes is hard. Winded. I don't feel like getting out of bed.
Yeah.
Anything that stimulated me made me want more. Netflix series. I'm going to watch one. Man, that trailer got me for 3 more episodes.
Yeah.
And then it's 3 a.m. I got to be up at 5:30. Now I can't be a good coworker. I had to learn what it was like to be a coworker. Because in my mentality, it's I'm going to come in and do my job. Selfish in a way, but I learned that people in life depended on me too as well. How my actions affect other people in a daily life. What kind of person do I want to be and how do I want to be to them? I can't control what they do. It was broken down to me that I can control my anger and my actions. That's it. I can be sad. I can cry. I can't control any of those. It's really hard to be like, I'm not going to cry,
You can control your anger?
I've learned how.
Ooh.
Absolutely learned how.
Teach me.
That's all you got to do. That's what I learned in this program is just ask for help.
Well, the one thing I've learned about anger in my life is it's been a reoccurring problem my entire life, and I seem like a very calm guy, but, and I'm usually, you'll never see me in an argument in traffic, it's interpersonal relationships, but what I have came to acknowledge is that I lack boundaries around the relationship in general, that I shouldn't even be in the room. I would not be in the room in any other circumstance.
Okay.
Like if you angered me every day, every single day, every week, whatever, once a week, whatever, to the point that I was losing my mind, I wouldn't be your friend anymore. I would just be like, that person doesn't exist, But in an interpersonal relationship, my codependency shows up and whatever it is. And I think, well, I'll just continue to do this over and over and over again. And this person might change one day, and that's just not the way the world works, And it took me a long time to understand that. Like, why do I keep making the choice? Why is this person still end up on my inventory over and over and over again? Just get rid of the person. It hurts. It sucks, but you won't be angry anymore. Am I going to be, if I continue the same behavior over and over with, say, the next person, I'll have the same result, but I'm prepared to not have that, but it took me 35 years to figure it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I talk about the steps, and the steps are great. But to touch base in the examples of my life are the traditions. That's a group setting. It's also helped me understand how to be around people.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Not just the inner work that I need to work on, but how do I use that around other people? In our 11th tradition, it's attraction rather than promotion. I don't go out and tell everybody, oh, I'm this recovered human being. I saw it in people. I let them see it in me. The examples that I use when I go and speak to groups, I let them know for the next 60 minutes, I'm not going to say one swear word. It's not because I don't. It's not because I can't. It's because I just want you to see a human being that can be in control of what they say for 60 minutes, that it is possible. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're like, what? I could never. It's possible if you try. So I learned how to do things in settings. When I would tell my stories or speak in groups, are you saying everything that's for you? Or are you saying things that are for other people to help them? Is it about you? No, it's not always, Because I have to remember in the traditions, when other people around me, the only requirement we had in 3 is just a desire to stop using. Remember what that's like. Don't come in here and tell everybody how you had heated seats on your way up here. You know what I mean? Your message out.
Somebody's which it has a lot to do with like where I was in life, but somebody's story. I heard somebody's story. His name was Glenn at Buffalo Valley. He was the director there at the time. And he would tell his story like once a week or something. And when he told me his story in a group, it changed my life. And it wasn't because there was hope, what he said, Him standing there was the hope, But he told my story, It wasn't the exact same. He was out in California, that situation. But the way he spoke about what he was going through and where he had been and the emotions, it was like, I felt like he was me. He was telling my story. And until that happened, I really never grasped anything, I was interested in what he had. I think a week later, I'd asked him, how do I turn my life over to God? And we did this chair exercise in his office. He said, I want you to write a letter to God, and I want you to commit to giving your life to God. I want you to come back with the letter. And he did. And he set me in a chair, and I did it. Once I got to AA, that I reworked the steps and all that stuff. But I mean, I don't even think I was interested until I heard him say that, It was a weird. So you never know. Like you were saying, who are you speaking for? I'm not speaking for the whole room. I'm speaking for one person practically.
Absolutely.
Like one person's going to hear what I have to say, I've been places where I think I went to Tony Rice one time and I had spoke and I had felt the necessary need to qualify myself more than I needed to. And I don't think I was as effective, Like, why do I need to qualify myself more here? Because I look like this now. I had a nice haircut. I didn't look like everybody in that room. I needed to make sure that they understood that I was them, But, like, I don't ever want to be in that situation where I want to overqualify myself. Why? For what?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So many things in this process of little bombs that were set inside of me, like I've went off to where I can explain what they are and how they work. I was in one rehab and they were going to kick me out in less than like 5 days. And I went, pulled my shirt off to cover my face from crying. Very vulnerable moment. I was like, I'm going to die. And I can't see anybody. My head's down. I hear a grown man say, no, you're not. I love you. You know what I mean? Me and my father's relationship was very distant. He never said I love you. But I heard a grown man say he loved me for the first time. I was like, little schoolgirl to dance, like, oh, I'm in love now. You know what I mean? I want to be around this person, right? But this dude would give me more accountability than you ever could, right? It was very grateful for me. So I wanted to be a part of his life. And the little things and the examples that I'm going to use is we had went and it was me, him, and his sponsor. And we were listening to a person speak, and not to be vulgar and nasty, but the guy was talking about the insanity that he had of, he would make love with, animals and stuff like that. Well, he's over here laughing and cutting up, and his sponsor just elbowed him so hard. I'm kind of like, okay, where's this going, Miyagi? You know what I mean? He's like, stop hearing that and hear the similarities. And that set me up in this recovery process to hear similarities in everything everybody says and how wild and chaotic and crazy it can be. We all relate some way or the other. So I've got to go through that process of understanding, what you say, what I say, what anybody says, hear the similarities, hear the message, not the messenger.
I do this thing, and there's this guy named Larry C. He had just passed. He's in recovery or in AA, and he does this thing where when he goes to meetings, he closes his eyes. And I've never asked him why he closes his eyes, but I started doing it. I close my eyes in meetings a lot for 30 minutes sometimes. And I think that what it does for me is it allows me to be present in the room. It allows me to hear what's going on with that person specifically. It allows me not to judge at all. I'm not judging for what they wear. I'm hearing what they're saying, People probably think, why is he's meditated for 30 minutes over there? But I'm just like, I don't know. I just picked it up, and it helps me see the similarities. Like, the longer I've stayed sober, the longer I've understood that the lady that drank too much and fell by the pool is closer to me than I was when I got here. It's the same thing. We feel the same way about the drink. We feel the same way. We have the same emotions. We have the same disease, But it took me a long time to understand. I was just like, she don't even belong here, like, she's not like me, But over the years, it's the same. We're the exact same.
And so about a week had went by, and this man gave me a drive to continue like nothing ever else has. And he's like, I want to tell you something. I've kind of debated on how to tell you, when to tell you, how to tell you. He's like, I have Lou Gehrig's disease. I'm like, what? He's like, yeah.
This is your sponsor?
No, it's just a gentleman in my life. And I was like, okay. He's like, he's the one who told me he loved me. You know what I mean? Here we go. Disattached from somebody, you're going to lose them again. I don't want that to happen. And he's like, I'm going to lose my legs and I'm going to eventually die. I'm like, okay. But he's like, I want to tell you one thing before it gets worse. He's like, I would rather die with this disease than from the disease. I was like, so you're telling me that even in a wheelchair, you don't want to use knowing when your last day on earth is? And it took me a little while to get it. And I'm like, that's a different kind of mentality. I haven't already seen the hope and all that stuff, but if I keep going, my mentality is even when end is near, I still want to finish the race. I still want to keep going and die with the disease than let it take me out. I was like, even though you've lost your legs and everything, you still have the wheel. I was like, that's the recovery I want. That's what I need. That's what I want. It just bombshelled me. It was wild. I didn't know somebody's mentality could go like that, because that's one of the greatest things of sticking around again. We come in and we don't even know what's going to happen, how it's going to happen. What I've learned through this process of, if you go to the meetings and you're around people in recovery, if you got a brother that dies, there's 3 others in the room that have went through it and can help you through it and didn't use over it. You lose a girlfriend, you lose a job. We're so close on similarities and people, and we can help you, because if we didn't use through it, we know you can get through it too. But availability, it's not about I anymore. And when we say group settings and traditions, I learned that yes, I need to be clean and stay clean, but it's about others too. I can't just take everything it offers, because I would go back and do 17 months in sober living again if they said they would double what I have to now. Yeah. Absolutely. It's given me a life worth living. I have hope today. And I don't wake up every day wanting it to end or hoping it would end. And I never want to go back. And I have to remember that going back's quick. I get a rebate for all my misery if I go back. I have so much to lose today that I think I'll fight enough to keep it for one more day. I don't ever say I'm going to have it next year. I don't ever say anything like that. I just keep it very simple in today. I don't want to lose what I have today. I'll figure out tomorrow, because I learned in recovery I'm not in control of what I did yesterday, and I don't know what tomorrow brings to even picture it together in my head and how to fix it. All I can control is right now, and I try to do the things to keep it, and that's sharing a message, learning about myself, being a good human being, coworker, son, etc., etc. It's given me the life worth living. But the reason why I do these things and here with you today is because sometimes people need to hear that you can get a whole lot more out of it than what you're expecting. It's not always about that girlfriend, an apartment, and a car.
Yeah.
You get the life worth living. You don't see the hope, but if you just hang around long enough, find something to keep you one more day.
Yeah, I always say if I would have written down the day I got sober, everything I ever wanted in life, everything, nothing's untouchable. I would have sold myself short.
Absolutely.
Every 100 out of 100 times. Like, I don't know when it happened, but like, just like a peace of mind and like my soul is okay and I don't owe anybody anything. It's just like something you can't buy. You can't like dream for, you know. It just like, I don't know. It just changed my life, you know. And I mean, I don't even know what I would have written on that piece of paper, but I know that it wouldn't have been what it is now, you know.
I always say that little joke, you know, if somebody gave me $1 million and told me I couldn't spend it on drugs, that million would still be sitting on the table because I didn't know what I wanted.
Yeah.
There was nothing else I obsessed or craved over but that. And going through recovery and staying clean, I've got to notice little odd and end things that I like doing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it takes time to like learn who you are. Yeah.
And I have time to figure it out because I'm not always chasing and sitting in a parking lot waiting on the next one.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. One of the things for me was the boat, the being on the water or whatever. It took me a long time to understand, like, or be able to like financially be like, okay, I can do this. But it is something that I wanted to do. Like, I grew up on the water. It was a pastime experience that I felt very free and in a flow state. And like, well, I want a life that I can do that on a weekly basis. Why am I not doing it, you know? But it took me a long time to like get there. I mean, to search for like, what does Matt like doing, you know? If you're like, do you want to go to a party on 4th of July? I'm like, nah, I don't want to. I don't want to do that, you know? But I do want to go to the lake every day of August, you know? Yeah.
And I have people that are really close to me now, and they get to ask those questions. I have hundreds of shoes, and they're like, why? You know, and I kind of tell them, I'm like, I can't tell you exactly, but I can kind of tell you what triggered it. When I escaped and got away from being kept, there was 2 different pairs of shoes. They were like a 10 and a half and 11, 2 different brands. And I'm a size 9 and I put those on, you know? And in my head, I was like, if I can ever buy a pair of shoes, I want shoes. And then through this whole process, I didn't know it would grant me the ability to have so many. But then, you know, I also get other people asking me, is that healthy?
Is it
I'm like,
healthy?
I'm an addict, but I always have to sit down. Am I powerless over it? Can I say, no, I don't want those? And does it make my life unmanageable? So far, it hasn't. And I get great enjoyment in having them. But it also reminds me when I put them on, it's not for everybody else. It's not, look at what these are.
Yeah.
It's, I've came this way. I've made it this far.
I have that like around my home, like my house. Like, I used to check my mailbox. Now my kids check my mailbox, but I used to check my mailbox every day, like walk from the truck to the thing. And they were like, dude, you were like, my family would be like, why do you check the mail so much? It was something about it that when I get this bill in the mail, I'm going to pay the bill. And my life's took care of, and I have this home and a yard, and it's nice. It's nothing special, but it's like, it's mine, you know? I earned it. And that's the same thing as the shoes, you know? That's like, it's something that brings me peace and joy and accomplishment in my life, you know?
Absolutely. That first apartment, I stayed in it 2 years. And then it came to the point of, do I renew it or what do I do? And I had financially got myself very stable and proven to myself that I can pay this. And I moved on and got a home. I'm in an HOA. You know what I mean? I have to cut the grass. So when I say I didn't really struggle in the sober livings, it puts the structure in your life. You know what I mean?
Does.
And now I don't have to look at a chore board. It's my chore no matter what it is. Taking that trash out and cutting the grass is my, look at that, Matt. Man, hopefully Sunday maybe I can no, there's no way to rotate with, you know? That sober living puts so much structure in my life, to get me there, but I didn't rush anything because I've noticed time after time after time, me rushing something's just not it, you know?
Yeah.
From taking my own life to enjoying every second is how I am now. I don't think about tomorrow. I take what I got right now because I know how easy it is to lose it.
I was trying to think of something else that was like that for my life. Like there is like when it comes to, I'm pretty strict financially, you know, which I've had to like look at. Like probably year 7, I had to, like, my sponsor, my old sponsor, I've had 3, but my second sponsor, he goes, when the bill comes to the table, Matt, and you're with a friend, what do? You look at your shoes, you don't answer, you pick up the bill, what's going on, you know? And I go, well, probably the first 2, you know? And he was like, we really spent about a year looking at like stewardship of money, you know, like I think he used the word a miser, like somebody that's like really cheap or not like cheap or greedy. Not greedy. Greedy would be like, I want more and more and more. It's not like that. It's like more of afraid that you're going to lose it or something, you know? So I started like looking at what stewardship was and doing things, practicing stewardship in the form of like, well, I'm donating to a recovery group that I'm the chairperson of, that I have a little bit of control of where the money's going. Well, is that really tithing and giving money to? You know, so I had to like look at other forms of like, well, I can give money here, but I have control over this money. You know, so am I really giving it away? Like, don't let your left hand know what your right hand's doing. Picking up bills in front of people, like we go to lunch, I pick up the bill, you know, just because. And then there was other things, but one of the things that I figured out is like, well, what do I want to spend my money on? You know, that's also a thing. Well, like this year I was able to go, for the rest of my life, I'm not going to mow the yard. Like somebody is going to mow it. You know, I don't enjoy mowing it. I mowed for a profession. I mowed as a child. I don't want to do it. And I mowed my, you know, entire life. I've had a mower and I had to work on it, change the oil, and like, I don't want to do it. So I'm just going to hire someone to mow the yard. You know, I can afford $1,000 a year, $1,200 a year for the rest of my life, you know? So like, those are the things that I want to spend my money on, like convenience, you know, like if I was able to like, which I don't do the DoorDash as much anymore, but if I was able to pay for DoorDash my entire life and never cook, I would do that, you know? That's an impossible, you have to be really rich to every meal to come DoorDash. But that would be my next, you know? Yeah.
And like that, it was years go by and I'm still clean, and people would always ask questions and check my inventory, and that's what we need, you know, 10th, am I right, am I wrong, you know, on the steps. And I always said I wanted to be normal. That was always my goal in my earlier failed days of trying to recover. I'll never be normal. I can't just walk away from the program. And they would be like, well, what are you doing that is normal? You know, you got years under you. You're doing everything you're supposed to do. What's an actual normal goal? Like, you know, I was like, well, I don't know. I would like to go to an Alabama game, you know? Went front row.
Yeah.
It was obtainable. Then I was like, man, I'm the biggest Kentucky fan in the whole wide world.
I'm sorry.
I got to shoot a free throw on the court. You know what I mean? Not during a game. Trust me, they would have pulled me out. I missed. But all those things. I got to go Miami on a beach. And then I was like, one more thing I want to do. Don't know if it makes sense or it don't. I want to go back to LA. So I stewed on it for a while. Is this good? Is it safe? Is it ego-based? Why do I want to do it? Is it like just putting your foot on top of the mountain? What is the drive behind it? Is it a refresher? You know, I got these years clean under me to keep me going. What is it? Drove by it, middle of the night, in a car, didn't want to stop, didn't get out. I looked at where I had my incident, and there was 2 dumpsters. Part of me wished there would have been a statue of me, but we know that's not it, you know? And I had a good bit of clarity when I did that drive-by. It let me know that life moves on. You know?
Yeah.
I survived it. Now, let's help someone else survive it. You know, it was one of the greatest things I've done in my recovery. It's not a financial accomplishment. It's not anything. It was the ability is what I'm proud of, to be able to do that. But in this recovery process, I've changed my thinking. It's happiness every day is impossible. If you can do it, you're a very rare human being.
Yeah.
And they taught me, you're a man. You want a purpose. My literature tells me, have a purpose. So I have a purpose every day when I get up. That's easier to accomplish than being happy because life will hit you. But if I can accomplish my purpose of being a good friend, a good coworker, a good employee, a good son, a good boyfriend, whatever it is, I'm full. Did I call another addict? I talked to another addict. Those things are so more fulfilling, and happiness comes with it. I can't control how bad work was or who cut me off. So I've learned to make my life a lot more simple. You know, take it easy. And that's how my recovery worked out. Everything fell in place. I didn't say I had to have the red carpet. I didn't. I just took what was available because my greatest thing was I came with nothing but brokenness. And for me, that was a key to recovery, being broken. My mom, she was a big preacher in that of, like I say, you know, being my first sponsor. She was a fan of Charles Stanley. She had given me a book called The Blessings of Brokenness. And I was like, how does that make sense? But I read it. So many great things come out of it. I didn't waste my years. I got to learn so much value in everything I've been through, but I have to give it away. So.
I'm reading this book called No Mud, No Lotus. It's around the same concept, which is you can't have the lotus without the mud. You can't have happiness without suffering. Why are we afraid of suffering? We should be engaging with it. Like we should learn how. We always try to like veer away from the suffering, but you can't have the good without the bad. It's like spiritual truth in general. Like you can't have light without dark. You can't have you can't have it. It's not possible. Mm-hmm. So you should lean more into it. There are people that are chasing happiness, you know, and they will. Those people, I assume, they're going to learn like,
yeah,
it's empty. It's an empty shell. Yeah. I think Will Smith, he had said something like, he's got tons of money, dude. Mm-hmm. If you got Will Smith money, you know, but he was like, after a certain point, like you buy every single thing, anything and everything you want, and you're still like empty. There's nothing like once you reach that amount of financial, like it does not bring quality of life to you, you know, like you could just buy an island, you know, you could buy whatever you want and like it still doesn't make you happy, you know. I think like everybody in life should experience having unlimited money once for a month and then be like, oh, it wasn't as good as I thought, you know.
Yeah. And like I said earlier, I was like, I have nothing to offer. When I speak to newcomers, a lot of times like, I don't have nothing to offer. Nobody wants to hear what I have to say. It's not true. You know what I mean? We all have something to share. It's pain. It's whatever, you know. I want to make it.
I've heard great things come out of newcomers' mouth. I've heard some wild stuff too.
Wild, great stuff.
I've heard some good stuff. But one thing my sponsor made us do is we would, for a month, I had to read only literature in the meeting, nothing else. Because I had, what are you sharing for? Like, what do you have to offer? So like, if we're talking about step 3, I had to read 60 to 63 and then close the book and say, glad y'all are here.
Clear cut message.
Yeah.
Man.
It'll make you like, that's what we're trying to say. You know, what are you trying to say in a meeting? We're trying to say the literature pretty much just in our own terms practically. So it did make me literature based, but there was another sponsee brother. He had to do it like longer because he would just spat crazy shit all the time. You know? Like nobody wants to hear you anymore, you know. Mm-hmm. If you had one thing to tell like a newcomer, if you had only one thing, like one advice, what would you tell them?
One newcomer.
Or a room full of newcomers.
Yeah, you know, it's the newcomer is, you know, our literature. This is my favorite thing when I speak to them. In my literature, Narcotics Anonymous, whichever program, they're all great. I've seen success from them all. But when I'm quoting that book, you know, our promise is, you know, you can lose the desire to use and find a new way to live. And the promise is freedom, right? So in the literature, it asks that one line question: how free do you want to be? So when I get with a newcomer, how free do you want to be? You know, it's open-ended. It's yours to gauge what you want. You get to do it on your newcomer mentality thinking, and then it gets to expand with you as you go.
Yeah, it never stops.
How free do you want to be? If you want to be really, really free and do whatever you want, come back tomorrow. And you'll get the freedom. That is the promise. And it hasn't been wrong in my life.
We do, in my sponsorship family, we do, all the sponsees I have, we do how free do you want to be in step 9. And sometimes I make them watch My Name is Earl beforehand.
There you go.
Because just so you could watch season 1 and understand, like, he's serious about making those amends. You get that list. He's like, he touches the thing and then he messes another thing up, and like, because he's not doing it correctly, and like, he's like really wants to be free. You know, his luck is bad, you know. But how free do you want to be is like, are you willing to go to Walmart and tell them everything you stole from them?
Mm-hmm.
You know, are you willing to talk to your best friend about sleeping with his old lady? You know, like, are you willing, you know, to do the things that are necessary? Are you going to be free, you know?
Mm-hmm. And I'll tell newcomers, I'm like, hey, let's go eat here. Wait, they serve alcohol, right? Are you willing to shut down every reservations? Would you tell that waitress up front, hey, don't serve me alcohol. Drinking's bad for me. I've already closed my choice of being able to consume. You know what I mean? Whereas if I'm with a group of 5, they all leave and I never told the waitress, I'm left by myself. I still have that freedom of choice. How free do you want to be to shut down everything? You know, a guy said something one time, and his name was Chris Carter, a football Hall of Famer. He used to go into meetings and used a different alias. He used to say a different name. He got confronted, and they said, we know who you are. You're Chris Carter. Start saying you're Chris Carter, and he's like, well, why? They're saying, because as long as you're somebody else, drugs has a higher power than you. It has more control over you. Until you're fully free to admit that you have a problem and you don't want to use it again. That's where the real freedom is. You know, do we always keep our ego and say, I don't want them to know nothing about me? And I got like that when I got to, you know, my place of employment. Like, do I want them to know I'm an addict? I didn't. But now if I told them after years, they wouldn't believe me. They'd be like, no way. Change is beautiful. It's wonderful. You know what I mean? I'm not embarrassed of it at all.
Yeah. I think in my home group, you were talking about traditions earlier, but we were talking about tradition 12, and, you know, the anonymity is supposed to be outside of the group, but like that guy not saying it, like, it's not inside the group.
Yeah.
You know who I am inside the group, but who I am outside the group is supposed to be my business, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm glad that my home group does the traditions. It's not their favorite thing in the world to discuss the traditions, but it does bring light to how much it affects our life and how principles over personalities is a real thing, and like how the infrastructure of the recovery program I'm a part of, or you're a part of, is like how grateful we are for it, even though we didn't create it, you know.
Mm-mm.
Like, there's a certain spiritual thing about sitting in a meeting and keeping my mouth shut and respecting what's going on around me, because I came from a place that was just wild, you know. So having structure and just like, okay, the meeting format is we share for 5 minutes and then the next person shares, but we can't crosstalk. That's 3 rules.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a lot of rules, but it's a lot of rules for someone like me, you know, for me. And then my sponsor going, you don't get up. You don't go get coffee. You don't go to the bathroom. You sit in this chair.
Absolutely.
Because you respect the meeting, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And for me early on, because I'm in AA, I had to respect that. Well, I know that I'm an addict also, you know, but I'm in my home group. Why am I going to disrespect the home group and say I'm an addict? What's the point, you know? So I had to like be respectful and say, you know, I'm mad I'm an alcoholic. I'm also an alcoholic, you know, but I didn't want to like, I had to conform to those ideas. And there was like a certain amount of spiritual stuff to that. Just sitting still for an hour following the meeting format, you know, which is like, you know, pretty much all the traditions, if you're doing them, you know, most of them are there, you know, like, but the primary purpose is for the person who's suffering, you know, like the desire for drinking is the only reason we're here, to qualify ourselves, you know, like there's tons of them, you know. The only ones that's kind of outside of that is, you know, like, you know, what you're doing in public and press, like
press, radio, and
press,
film.
radio, and film. So, yeah.
I came from
which I'm not great at that. You know?
I come from the hardcore days where they make you look at yourself. You know, I was always taught, if you're talking to someone or on your phone, you're literally telling the person sharing,
you don't care.
You don't matter.
Yeah.
You don't matter. Oh, you're going to get up. You're going to be a distraction. Look at all the selfish behaviors you have. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's what I needed in my life, was constantly things pointed out.
Yeah.
You know, but it does make sense to me. You know what I mean?
It does.
I'm there to save my life. But when we talk about the traditions, I'm always reminded the newcomer is the most important person. Do I want to open my mouth and just throw out junk, or do I want to open my mouth and help someone that needs it? You know, am I speaking to hear myself, or am I speaking to help someone? That's why traditions and the guidelines are just great for me. Just a group setting. It's not high. It's we. Unity and recovery is the greatest thing. We come from all different places, but we have that one goal, the unity. We just want to get another 24, whichever program you work.
Yeah. Where do you see yourself in 5 years?
5 years. I love that. I love that. 5 years.
I hate that question.
Because it makes me think back to the old 1 year. I used to go to rehabs and they'd let me write 3 things down, put it on envelope. Never got to open them. But 5 years, it gets me to think back on a new cover level. And then it's like, well, you think you've accomplished everything, right? You've gotten everything you've ever wanted, right? But the next 5 years for me are so much more spiritual things that I want. How do I want to be remembered? How do I want to be known as a person? How do I want to be known? How do I want to be talked about? You know what I mean? When somebody's like, do you know Matt? Like, let me tell you about this dude, man. I was on the side of the road, didn't know him from anybody, and he helped me. You know what I mean? That's what I want, because anything financial is going to perish and disappear one day. My legacy and what I have in the relationships that I've had is what I want. I tormented my mother for so many years that I want her to enjoy the last years that she has. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I would rather bury her than she have to bury me almost a million times like she almost had to. I want to give that to her, try to outlive her. But that means I have to also be healthier. It's eat better, do everything. Those are like my 5-year goals. People are like, well, what do you want to be like at a job? And I'm like, okay, that's a great question. Anything that makes me sit and think is wonderful, because I can get a different perspective. Do I want to be the boss of bosses? What do I want? Is it greed? Is it more money? I don't really think I want greed or any kind of more financial. I'm okay with the bare minimum because I know I can live under a tent. You know what I mean? I just want those legacies, the kid, the family, the great relationships with my family, her family. All those things is what I want, and be able to have what's sustainable. But in the job aspect of normies, I want a job where I can help people be better. Like, if I can train them to become better, that's great. You know what I mean? If they take my job, whatever I'm doing, that's fine. I'm just very passionate about helping other people because it's made my life great. I'm not me-centric anymore. That's what I would want in 5 years. I feel like I've seen and done everything. Things are going to happen whether I want them to or not. I'm going to see more things and enjoy more things. But the things I want to accomplish are definitely spiritual things.
Yeah. I did this maybe, which is still there. Like, you know, in AA, we do a personal ideal and a sex ideal after a 4-step. And the sex ideal is who you want to be sexually, not who you want to be, and who do you want to be personally. So, you know, when I first started, my personal ideal was very simple. I just want to be honest. It's pretty much same thing sexually. I just want to be honest in the relationship, and I don't want to hurt anybody, you know. Over time, I've learned, like, I think around year 7 or 8, we did a personal ideal, sex ideal. And for me, this helped me. It's like, sexually, I want to be a safe man. So that means to me that it could mean anything to anybody, but it means to me that I can take your girlfriend to lunch and you don't think anything. My partner doesn't think anything. Nothing. I could go to a meeting at noon and we all go to lunch and I take a woman and there's not anything. Now, for me to accomplish that, it's going to take years and years and years for me to have good behavior and good ethics and not ever step out of the line, never be whatever. The same thing for me to be like what it means to me to be a great father and what it means to me to be a great husband or a great partner is like it like puts me up here, you know? So it's something that I'm like striving for. And those are the things that I want to be. Like I want to be a safe man, great partner, great husband. So like how do I do those things? Well, I have to show up every single day and do the right thing and like, you know, even when I make mistakes, I have to, you know, make those amends and like, you know, I'm going to make mistakes, but like to be a great man and great father, you have to be, I'm not going to say you can't have a mark on your record because that's a lot of pressure, but you have to like almost purify yourself over time, you know?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So like, you know, I think my therapist asked me a long time ago, like, what's your year goal? What's your 5-year goal? And I was like, I don't do those. Like, I want to be retired by I'm 40. Well, what does that mean? How do you get there? I don't know how I get there, but I get there, you know, like whatever stands in my way of retiring at 40, I will move. Like, it's more of like, instead of having like how we're going to get there, I just have like a very far goal. And I understand a lot of people don't do well with those. They will lose themselves in the long-term goal situation. They'll go, it's so far off that I don't know how to do the small stuff. Well, I think I understand that doing the small daily task is what's going to get me there, you know. But I think a lot of people shoot with that in mind. Like they'll be like, I want to be a country music singer or whatever they want to be. Like, well, how are you getting there? Are you recording music? No, I'm not doing that. Are you writing music? No. Are you practicing? No. Well, you're not really, you know. I'm like actually doing the things, you know. Yeah. Have you ever, where's your dad? Have you ever contacted him? Have he ever contacted you?
No. I've lived more days on this earth without him than I have with him. That's the thing that I always have to ask myself. And when I was telling you about this recovery process of how many people have gone through kind of the similarities and how they treated it.
Yeah.
I remember at a young age, you know, my father had told me that he went to his father's funeral to make sure that he was dead, and it was the funniest day of his life, right? So I always got that thing of saying, well, what do I get to do when it's my turn now? Have I matured? Am I more spiritual? What will that day be like, you know? Assume he has another family and other people that love him, or like our last name provides, we all wind up dying alone. His father died alone, his brothers, same thing. All those scenarios happen, you know.
So every guest we ask, what is the poem is powerful beyond measure. Man, it's a great poem. I usually say it when I speak or whatever, but every guest we ask, what is your deepest fear? So when you answer the question, what's your deepest fear right now? When you answer the question, you'll say, my deepest fear is, and then but you have time to think about it, unless you've already thought about it.
My deepest fear today, you know, sitting here 40 years old, my deepest fear is to fall off track, to lose who I am and what I've gained. You know, I can throw it away so quick, but through all these years of recovery, I know how much of a hill it is to climb back to it. And my fear is that I don't have the will to put the effort forth to get it all back again. That I would selfishly just take a softer, easier route. Because sitting here today with all I've gained and all I've accomplished, I would say I don't have another one in me. So I put a little bit more effort into not having another run in me. But I will say one thing, I don't think it's possible for me to get back out there because I've developed so many relationships with people that would really want to keep helping me. You know what I mean? And I got to remember that the program is very forgiving. You know, one of the things they always told me is you can always start over. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't want to lose what I have, so I'm gonna just keep giving it away. But that is my fear, that I get disconnected from this program and other people.